welcome everybody. Looking forward to addressing some questions today. Before we get started, here's our panel, folks that you've probably become used to if you've been attending these for a while. Forrest Evans is with us, Scott McAllister, Pam Watson, and JP is currently hiding in the audience, but here helping us as well. So as Tracy said, we are taking our questions through the Q&A area, and JP has done us a favor and entered the first couple of questions. If you haven't done this before, we're looking for your feedback on both questions that you have, but also if there are questions you're seeing that you're interested in hearing answers for, then you can vote on them using the thumbs up function inside of the Q&A feature. So the first question we saw, and these are questions that came in ahead of time. First question we saw was, we are seeing a situation where jobs that reference other jobs are duplicating the job runs in the recent 3.3.9. Okay, well that's not something actually I've run into. Does anyone have some thoughts on this?
I have feedback. So that was actually submitted as a GitHub issue, and it looks like they resolved it by changing the version of Java. They weren't able to reproduce it for us, and we weren't able to reproduce it, but there is a GitHub issue out there if anyone's curious about following that. I don't see the person that submitted the question in the attendees list, so we can probably move on to
a good general question. What's the best way to learn how to use Rundeck?
This is Forrest. I can take a start on that one as well. We just recently released, and Tracy has put the link in the chat. There's the PagerDuty University, and there is an intro to Rundeck. You know, I think that it's mostly slides and content. Pam, do you have more details on what's on the university?
I can speak to that. The class that's out there today is really very general, intended to get people familiar on your team who don't know anything about Rundeck to get some basic Rundeck concepts. We will be adding a few more things to that class in terms of some demo within the interface. That's not really there yet. And then we will be adding other classes as well. So over time, that's going to be a great place to go. Right now, it's a good place if you've got team members you want to become familiar with how people use Rundeck and kind of basic concepts.
So beyond that, there's a variety of other sources. There's obviously the documentation. There is a tutorial section that kind of walks you through a few exercises, etc. We're also I personally am actively working on building a lot more content around both integrations and Rundeck. Generically, these would be in the form of example projects, example jobs, etc., that you could use to learn from it. And then, of course, there is Nathan's team, which also includes Pam, that offer a variety of training type services. So, Pam, Nathan, if you want to talk about the offerings that you guys have around that.
Yeah, well, I can speak up on that as well. The two main pieces we have that I could see is being related to training. We provide a service that's just training for a number of users that can be on topics that are more about the general Rundeck user, how to run jobs and utilize the interface. We also teach sessions for people who are job editors and need to create and understand some of those functions. And we also have training for people who are Rundeck administrators, which is typically a much smaller subset. We do also have something called a use case accelerator. The use case accelerator is not training per se, but is focused on helping you get up and running on a particular use case you have within Rundeck. So it does involve some training. It does involve some brainstorming with you to figure out how to address the need that you have. But it's focused on trying to accelerate your usage around a specific task that you have in mind.
So that question, was put in the Q&A by JP, but Andrew, I see you're on the call. You had sent that to us before the webinar today. If you have any follow-up questions, feel free to throw them in there, or if you want to just comment maybe in the chat about what other types of training are effective for you or your team. So maybe next question then.
Sure thing. So the next one I'm going to grab is actually not the next one listed, but can you explain ACLs for multiple teams? Any recommendations or best practices thinking in security? I'll start with this. Access control obviously is a key element of Rundeck. If you're working with Rundeck, you know there's a lot of ways you can use it. ACLs can be used kind of along two different axes. You can control what objects people have access to, meaning you can control access to nodes and jobs and projects. The top level of that is projects. So someone either has access to a given project or they don't. And then if they have access to that project and are able to do things in it, you can control which nodes they can use. And you could do that based on node names or tags on nodes, that sort of thing. Jobs you can control based on job names, job groups. And so there's lots of ways that you can handle that. If you're looking to, within a project, give access to different teams and you want those different teams to have access to different jobs and nodes, then how you organize your jobs and how you organize your nodes will make a difference. So in terms of jobs, putting those jobs into job groups that might be specific to your teams makes it much easier for you to provide access to those without providing access to other things. And using tags on nodes lets you do the same. You do need to keep in mind also that you need to provide access to keys or passwords in order to allow your users to be able to get to the nodes that they have permission for. So that the keys are a separate element that needs to be accessed, and how you organize your keys in the key store is important as well. So again, you could take the idea of organizing keys and passwords by team maybe or function, so that you are only giving somebody access to the section of the key store that they need, and that includes the pieces that they need. That's kind of where I would start is thinking about how I organize the elements so that I can provide access. Now the other aspect of access control is what types of roles people have, meaning what types of actions they can do. So we've talked about giving them jobs and nodes, but in that context, are they people who are going to write and edit jobs, or are they just people who are going to run jobs, or maybe they're a read-only user of some kind? Thinking about it in that way, then you're going to create different policies or rules that will allow somebody to edit jobs maybe versus run jobs. In general, there probably are more people running jobs than are editing them. So, starting with the basic elements to allow everybody, if this is right, to run jobs might be the place to start, and then layer on for the smaller subset of people the ability to edit jobs as well. Anybody else on the team want to add anything to that?
Yeah, installed with Rundeck, there's actually some example policies kind of the typical roles that we see. So admin, which is like full access, and then like Nathan said, a project administrator. So a lot of times people will have, someone from the group that owns the project, give the permissions and manage the ACLs within the project. And then there's also the job runner policies that come installed.
One thing that I will point out, it goes beyond what the specific question asks, but ACLs, if you're setting up ACLs, you can set them up in two places. You can establish them within the higher level area that's only available to administrators. And at that area, you can establish rules that are either Rundeck general rules, meaning they're outside of projects, or you can establish things that are within a project context. So you can write all your rules in that area, or you can write rules inside the specific project where that rule is going to be applied. And if you write them inside the project, they're only applicable to that project. This is a little complicated, but it allows you to apply rules, to have somebody who is a project administrator, as Pam just alluded to, who can write rules just for that project, even though they might not have access to write rules above in the more general Rundeck context. And in general, the more you can write that's in the project areas, the better off you are. That just isolates things so that you don't accidentally give out access that you don't need to. Next question. My team is nervous about automating things. How can I convince them that this is the future? Wow.
I can take a little bit of that one.
Okay.
I'm going to make the assumption that we're kind of talking about incident management automation, and what we typically encourage is the crawl, walk, run approach. We usually see organizations start, with some incident management automation on low risk activities that fall into that category of try this first, right? Anytime there's an issue. It might be, that level one part might be something like just adding diagnostic information to a ticket where you're not performing any actions against a node or an endpoint, but you're gathering some information and adding it to that ticket so that responders can have the information they need right when they get into the incident, rather than they see there's a problem and then they have to go do some troubleshooting and this would be, for example, you're getting memory stats or free disk space, or it would depend obviously on the scenario, but just putting some diagnostic information is a quick way to start showing some of that automation and seeing some benefits there. Moving up the level 2, if you will, or the next level might be, again, low risk, but actual automation against the endpoint. Delete some temp files, clear a cache, whatever's, simple risk that might be common troubleshooting tasks. And you slowly grow those in that realm to get comfortable with, great, now that my automation is doing, these first 8, 10, 12 things, what do I now maybe want to try? And it can be with the ACLs and the UI that Rundeck has. You can provide that as an on-demand. So maybe the next step is restart a service, but you do that on demand for a while and then work it into automation.
I think that's a good approach. Often we do have teams that are interested in automation, but there is a little bit of concern about moving there too fast. So thinking of it as something that you can get to in stages. Sometimes that means thinking of your initial work as push button automation, meaning we're ready to do the work, but there's still a human to press that button, is a good place to start. I'm going to go to the question that David just submitted. If there are GUI changes, to quickly tell the difference between dev and prod Rundeck instances, what are the best practices? So that's a good question, David. I can speak to that generally. We have some environments like that, and I think the way that we've done that and the way that I've seen other customers do it is using changes in the logo that shows up in the GUI as well as the color scheme. Those are things that you can change, and if you make things visually different enough, hopefully that makes it very clear which cluster or instance you're in. And I think that's maybe the best way to handle that. I don't know. Does anybody else on the team have a?
Yeah, some of my customers use a message of the day in order to add a header, and I can show what that looks like if you want.
Sure.
So David asked a follow-up question of change the logo color scheme, like where is the logo stored? I think there are some docs or maybe some tips out there on how to change that. There's a couple different ways to approach it. There's UI plugins, and then there might be a simple config setting that you can set. So we'll find you some docs on it.
So message of the day is actually set within a project, right? So you can see the message actually shows up here. You can also put more information down below, and then once they click that, it hides it. But the message of the day is set under project settings. So, right, message of the day. So you have some styles and stuff that you could choose from. This is Markdown. So you could make it like a warning style if you wanted. Save, and that just shows within the project. So you might want to do the logo if you have separate clusters for like your dev and production environments. But if it's at the project level, you can use this message of the day. And then for me, the Zoom thing is hiding the message of the day, right? So then you can see it right here. Oh, because my license expired.
Great. Thank you, Pam. We had one other question about something in the UI. Can we see how the self-service UI works? Is it customizable? Anybody, Forrest, maybe, do you have anything you could show or talk to around that?
I do. I guess I'll read into the question a little bit that you're looking for. So when we say self-service UI, you can obviously log in as an admin and edit and change and build jobs. And that is, if we were to look inside a Rundeck portal, I'm currently logged in as admin. I get a full menu bar over here. I can come in and, see all the various jobs and edit them and, configure users and ACLs and everything, right? But we also want to be able to provide this to our technicians or other people on our teams, which sounds like what Andrew's preparing for as well. So, we have our user manager, and you can manage users locally or bring them in through single sign-on. In my environment here, I've got a few extra accounts for Alice and Bonnie. Those are the official names for some of the characters you might see on our website. And they're configured just as standard users. So they will only have access to certain projects and to do certain things. So if I log out and log in again as Alice, let's see if, so you can see that I have far less options here on the left, and I'm gonna only have access to run certain jobs. I don't have access to run any of the jobs that are under the variables folder here, but I do have access to run specific jobs underneath my my demo folder. I also don't have as much under my gear menu over here. So now we can provide access to Alice to just run maybe this end of day, it's quitting time job.
Yeah, I think that's great, Forrest. Thank you. While Forrest was doing that, I did a quick look in our docs. I just put in the chat a link to the section of the docs that talks about the GUI customization. Most of that customization is applied within one of our config files. So you can take a look there, and it's got lots of things you can change up. But as I said, I think the common way I've seen that addressed is by looking at the sidebar colors. That's a pretty strong indicator of where you are. So making sure that you've got something distinct between the different environments makes a big difference.
Yeah, so looking at the top of these, there's going to be a file depending, everyone there's different ways to install it. There's the Rundeck config properties. Well, you'll just add some of these entries in there with the value that you're looking to use.